In July of 2009, thousands of mourners flocked to Michael Jackson's memorial service, and the rest of the world looked on through tears. Not only had an American icon passed, but so had an era. And with it, a generation reflected on the man, his music, and all the eccentricities of a creative genius. There was the media circus and the real one. At the height of Michael's popularity, a young chimpanzee named Bubbles was one of his closest and most trusted companions.
Bubbles became a human. He became one of us.
Bubbles wore designer clothes, flew first class, and made appearances on TV talk shows.
You like heavy metal music?
Bubbles rocked the world's media and even learned how to moonwalk.
Man with best friend as a monkey. So Michael would have thought, right, okay.
You want a weirdo? I'll give you weird. I can do weird. You want weird?
What may have appeared unusual to most was completely natural to the king of pop. Michael turned to animals for comfort and unconditional love.
These animals understand me. You don't. It was as simple as that. These are my friends, not you.
But all of Michael's fame and riches still couldn't defy the laws of nature. Bubbles would eventually grow up. What has become of the most famous chimpanzee in the world? Michael Jackson's younger sister LaToya is on her way to an emotional reunion after 20 years. She's looking for closure after her brother's death.
I've said over and over to Michael before he passed, of course, I wonder what Bubbles is like now. I wonder what he's doing. Has he changed drastically, or is he the same? But I would love to see him and see.
Michael Jackson's life was extraordinary, the greatest entertainer the world has ever seen, and the biggest global artist of all time. But there was a price to pay for being the king of pop. Along with all the desired accoutrements of stardom, sometimes comes a steep bill, the scrutiny, the judgment, and in the case of Michael Jackson, often the ridicule. Adoring fans could only offer love from the distance. What Michael may have really wanted was a friend who could love him unconditionally.
He loved animals, and he would speak to them and talk to them and as if they were his best friend.
Michael formed bonds with all his animals, but he was especially close to Bubbles.
Michael would have become a surrogate mother to Bubbles. He would have been able to form a very meaningful, intense, physical relationship with Bubbles.
For a long period of time, Michael and Bubbles were inseparable, both in public and in private. Their lives seemed to mirror each other's. But as a kitten becomes a cat, and a puppy a dog, a chimpanzee grows into an adult. As Michael's life changed, so did his relationship with Bubbles, and the world's most famous chimpanzee quietly disappeared from Michael's scene. For 20 years, Bubbles' fate remained a mystery, until now.
You guys just don't know the love that we all had for Bubbles, and especially Michael.
Michael Jackson always loved animals. In fact, the whole Jackson family did. Michael's sister LaToya spent many years living in the bedroom next door to him and Bubbles in their family home.
My father loved dogs. We had a dog named Frisky. We had so many pets growing up, dogs, and my father loved cats, and just so many different animals around the house. And it's so funny because he had this love for animals, and my mother didn't care for it at all.
The Jackson parents, Joseph and Catherine, had 9 children. Joseph knew his kids were talented, and he's long acknowledged with pride how he rehearsed them relentlessly.
His father said to him, "Don't call me Daddy, don't call me Dad. It's Joseph to you." And so any child, I think, who has that kind of a strained relationship with their father has to relate to their father more like a manager or business manager than as a parent, I think would have difficulties growing up and sort of understanding what love was and being able to navigate relationships when there was so much torment in some of his personal relationships.
I decided to deal with the boys as much as I possibly can as far as rehearsing them, getting them prepared to be in show business.
Did they resent it?
Yes.
They did?
Yes.
My father started rehearsing every day after school. Other kids would be outside playing, and they would tease us, oh, you're doing this, you're not going to get nowhere, you're not going to... And we just rehearsed every day.
The type of love that came from his father was a very dominating one, and at times cruel.
He practiced us with a belt in his hand. And if you didn't do it the right way, he would tear you up, really get you. I don't think he realizes to this day how scared, so scared that I would regurgitate.
When someone has been hurt by human beings to such a degree that they are so scarred that they have a difficult time forming relationships with others, or even wanting to attempt forming new relationships for fear of being harmed, animals are really a nice alternative.
When a child wants a pet, it's because they want something to love. And they want to feel the love being reciprocated. They want to be loved in return.
When Michael was 11 years old, the Jackson 5 hit the big time. They had 4 singles released, and all of them went to number 1. The family moved to California, to a large gated compound in Encino, in the hills above the San Fernando Valley. Michael Jackson would live in the family home for the next 17 years, building up quite a menagerie.
He had hamsters, and he had rats, and he had lizards, and everything you could think of. He had it. He had quite a few rats. I think his first one, I recall it being a little white mouse that he had.
Michael loved his pets and took any opportunity to play practical jokes on his brothers and sisters.
He would pull it out of his pocket, and I would scream every single time. It's like, oh, what are you doing with that in the restaurant?
The Jackson 5 were working 15 hours a day and late into the night. Between seemingly endless rehearsals, Michael was spending time with his animals.
I think it was sort of a diversion from music, because the music was always there. And aside from the music, when you're not being musical most of the day, then you can turn to your animals and play outside of your family. It's something else.
In 1972, at the age of 14, one of Michael's most famous songs, Ben, about a boy and his pet rat, was released. The song would be the first of 13 solo number 1 hits. At one time, Michael had up to 30 pet rats living in his bedroom.
Such a connection with his little rats that I wasn't a big fan of. Not the rats, no.
The rats were only the beginning. Soon, Michael would have a menagerie that would make a zookeeper jealous.
Michael had boa constrictors and pythons, and we connected with them. We had a love for them, and my mother would say, you know, you can't be that friendly with them because you never know what the animals are going to do, which in fact she was right, because sometimes the snakes, you know, if we leave them out too long, a parrot's missing.
Because he was an extreme character, I think he would have identified with extreme species and exotic animals. I think he would have perhaps seen himself as exotic and extreme in some way.
At 21, Michael's solo career was taking off, and his first solo album, Off the Wall, became one of the world's best-selling albums. Wherever Michael went, he was quickly mobbed by fans.
Today, the Jacksons travel first class. Fame makes them vulnerable. On the road, theirs is a life of back doors and security guards, quick entries and exits.
With fame came pain. At the time, Michael described himself as being one of the loneliest people in the world.
I'm most comfortable on stage than any place in the world
Being around, everyday people and stuff, I feel strange. I do.
Shy?
Yeah.
Michael's quiet now. When he was younger, he wasn't that quiet. But I don't know. I think the stage might have done that to him. Because wherever he go, everybody's coming out to see Michael Jackson, want to look at him and see what he looks like. And he said he feels like an animal in a cage.
Imprisoned by fame, Michael found it difficult to find friends he could trust.
When you become that huge, that big, everybody is like a yes person for you. And everybody's there, and everybody wants to be a part of you, and everybody wants to know you, and everybody wants to be your friend. You begin to think, well, who is my friend? Are you here because I'm this big? Or are you here because you like my personality, me for what I am? So you kind of wonder. And you turn more so to animals even more because they don't know that. They love you for who you are. They're not asking for anything. Just love. Just simple love.
Rats, snakes, exotic birds weren't enough. Michael soon wanted a pet even more extreme. 1982 was the year Michael Jackson's life and the pop world changed forever. His second solo album, Thriller, catapulted to number 1 and stayed at the top spot for an astounding 37 weeks. His ever-escalating fame continued to exact its price, and Michael set his sights on a new and unconventional companion.
My mother made a vow with all of us. She says you can have whatever animal you want, but you can never have a monkey.
Michael persisted, and slowly but surely, he convinced his mother. Bubbles was born in a research lab and later sold to Michael.
Finally, it happened. A little chimp came, a little baby, so cute, so adorable. And he begged my mother if he could have it, and begged her. And she says, I said no. And he says, please. And she finally gave in and says, okay.
Having a relationship with a great ape would be unique from any other species of animal. They're so like us. You know, they have hands, they can hold on to you, they can kiss you. They are almost human. So having a relationship with a chimp would have been his most special relationship with any animal.
Bubbles became part of the Jackson family and was given all the privileges of a human child.
Michael would dress him in Oshkosh Bagosh and all the different little designer clothes and things of that nature. He had his own nanny, and he was just the sweetest, politest thing that you could possibly ever imagine. Bubbles became a human. He became one of us.
Pretty soon, Bubbles made himself at home.
All the cooks in the house love Bubbles. Bubbles, you can stir the food. Mother goes, don't you dare let him do this. I don't want him preparing food for me. Bubbles ate at the family table, and he ate just like we did with a knife and fork. He has to have Tabasco in his food, and then he starts to eat it. And it was the cutest thing. He knew what he wanted. He would open up the refrigerator and the freezer, go and get the Haagen-Dazs, get a spoon, sit down, and start eating Haagen-Dazs. It was always the cutest thing. And when he's done, he just gets up and walks away.
Michael and Bubbles became inseparable. Everywhere Michael was, Bubbles was there too, 24 hours a day.
When it was bedtime, Michael would say, Bubbles, go put on your pajamas and go to bed. And Bubbles would go in the drawer, take his pajamas out, put them on, and then he would say your prayers. And he would get on his knees and say his prayer. And he would say, now get in the bed and go to bed. And then he'd jump in the bed, put the covers over him, and go to sleep.
An infant chimp would sleep in the mother's nest with the mother. Well, your bed is your nest when you're human. So Michael was intuitively doing what was right for Bubbles. Michael would have become a surrogate mother. he would have been getting a lot of love in return, and here was a creature who craved love and affection. He would have been able to form a very meaningful, intense, physical relationship with Bubbles.
One morning, Michael called me. He goes, "You gotta see this, you gotta see this. He mimics everything I do." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Watch." So Michael's in the room and he's brushing his teeth, and Bubbles looks up and he gets a toothbrush and he starts brushing his teeth. And this is the cutest part, Michael starts combing his hair, then Bubbles combs his hair, but he combs his arm. He's just combing his arm. I go, "Michael, it's not even his head. He's combing his arm." He realized that's hair there too.
Michael felt so close to Bubbles that he wanted his friend to communicate with him, and he was determined to find a way. Michael had a fascination with science, anatomy, and anything that would help make it happen.
He had a real brain come to the house, and he had in a jar. "It's a real human brain. Where'd you get that from? Who gave you?" He goes, "Shh, don't tell Mother."
It was all part of Michael's master plan.
Michael always wanted to know, how can I make him speak and talk? And he wanted to find out. He wanted to give it vocal cords. He asked doctors, "Can I give it an operation? Can I give him vocal cords? Because I want to know what his thoughts are, what he's really saying."
Their larynx isn't positioned in the right place for speech. It's too high up in the throat.
Although Bubbles would obviously never be able to talk, he still wasn't like any of Michael's other animals.
I met you about 2 years ago, Bubbles, and you've had a lot of publicity in the meantime. You're still the same sweet old chimp that you always were? The same person? Don't do that.
Bubbles was about to become a pop icon, just like Michael. And with him, be at the mercy of the media. Along with Michael Jackson's meteoric fame came increased isolation. He would come to identify with other icons who shared similar experiences. Oliver was one of Michael's favorite musicals. He related with the rags to riches story of a young boy. British actor Mark Lester played the title role.
Michael had a lot of friends, but few very close friends, so I was very honoured to be one of Michael's close friends.
Their families spent Christmases and holidays together, and Mark later became godfather to Michael's 3 children. As a trusted friend, Mark Lester had more than a casual glimpse of the real Michael Jackson.
Well, Michael always told me that he was an illusionist. You know, he created this aura about himself. It was a smokescreen effect.
In 1986, the tabloids ran a story claiming Jackson slept in a hyperbaric chamber to slow the aging process. Similar reports claimed he offered to buy the bones of the Elephant Man. Jackson did not deny the stories.
Michael was very clever because his private life was not penetrated by the press, so he could serve up any illusion he liked, and the press went along with it, so he was quite happy with that.
Could Bubbles have been just another way to gain more press attention?
This happened to be a pet monkey, but for Michael it would have been part of the illusion, because the press would have picked up on it, you know, man with best friend as a monkey, you know, and writing about it. So Michael would have thought, right, okay, dress him up, put him into a suit, and we'll continue with the illusion of that. So Michael would have played on that.
Certainly it was different, and certainly it was eccentric, and to some people it might have been extreme. He really did enjoy the relationships that he had with his animals and found that fun and pleasure and security and safety. At the same time, though, knowing perhaps with a wink of his eye that it was going to draw some attention to himself in an unusual way.
Whatever the real story, some in the media viewed Bubbles as the last straw in what seemed like Michael's increasing detachment from reality, which contributed to the tabloids labeling him Wacko Jacko, a moniker he understandably despised.
Wacko Jacko, where'd that come from? Some English tabloid. I have a heart and I have feelings. I feel that when you do that to me. It's not nice. Don't do it. I'm not a wacko.
I think the British press and tabloids were very, very cruel and they are to everybody. And in a way, some of maybe Michael's antics were taken in the wrong way by some of the tabloids.
You should not say he's an animal. Should not say he's Jacko. I'm not a Jacko. I'm Jackson.
His feelings may have been so hurt that he may have thought to himself, you want bad? I'll be bad. I'll be bad for you if you want. I'll be a weirdo. You want weird? You know, so that may have happened. And then, of course, the press just fed off it all the more.
Did it do him any harm? Still sold the most records of any pop star ever. So Michael always said, you know, the worst kind of publicity is no publicity. His name, his face was always in the papers.
Even still, there comes a breaking point, and Michael was reaching it.
I don't think he knew what the consequences would be. And perhaps Michael Jackson's gamesmanship and some of the way that he liked to play with others and maybe even play with the media brought him more trouble than he realized it would bring.
In 1987, he wrote Leave Me Alone, a song with a video that famously features his snake Muscles along with Bubbles. There was little mistaking his message.
Leave me alone. These animals understand me. You don't. It was as simple as that. These are my friends, not you.
There was nothing unusual about Michael screaming out for a little piece, and he found it in Bubbles. Wherever Michael went, the now 3-year-old Bubbles went too.
Bubbles traveled private a lot. He wanted him to fly, so he put him on a plane, first-class ticket. Yes, absolutely. Wherever he could take him and get away with it, he would. Wherever he was accepted, then Bubbles was there.
1987's Bad Tour was a worldwide phenomenon. Bubbles was there nearly every step of the way, chaperoned and cared for by Hollywood animal trainer Bob Dunn.
He's traveled all over the world. Do you have any difficulty getting him in and out of countries?
We have to pull a lot of permits, but we do it. He loves traveling.
There were numerous challenges, quarantine laws not the least of them. But Japan was unique. It was a culture anxious to embrace Bubbles.
Monkeys and apes have a very high status. Japanese culture is all about the wisdom of the ape and the monkey. They would have wanted to see him with Bubbles. Bubbles would have had fans in Japan.
It was great showmanship, to be sure. All part of the Michael Jackson mystique. But for Michael, it was more personal than that.
Taking his animals with him was a way of him to have a sense of safety with him when he was in perhaps environments that caused some sort of anxiety. I had the opportunity in the late 1980s when I attended a Michael Jackson concert to be seated near Bubbles, and he seemed to actually be watching and enjoying the concert. Perhaps he was able to interact in society in ways that humans would interact in society and yet still be a chimpanzee.
Bubbles' stunts got better and better. Like a bright toddler, he learned very fast. He even imitated Michael's most famous dance move.
Now, there is a celebrity sitting in our audience.
When Bubbles performed the moonwalk, he brought the house down.
Let me see you do your stuff, Bubbles.
Moonwalk.
All right. You're a good old guy. Thank you, Bob, very much. Thank you, Bubbles.
But life in the spotlight was taking its toll. The paparazzi attention was intense for a human being, let alone a chimpanzee.
I have seen him get scared. We got, let's say, mauled or trampled at one location, and they just stormed so bad and crowded us so much that Michael and his entourage got separated, and Bubbles and I got separated with our security guys, and we got pushed into a corner into an elevator. I could feel him clinging to me, and he started to bark. He was a little scared.
The Bad Tour lasted 18 months. 123 concerts, drew 4.5 million people. Michael would take Bubbles wherever he could. But chimpanzees are not ideal traveling companions. And the older he got, the more difficult it became. Bubbles wasn't a baby anymore.
Bubbles at one point became extremely strong, so he wasn't this little baby that would slap you and can get away with it. They were powerful slaps. They could knock you out. Sometimes he would slap and everything would fly off the table. Yes, and then he'd grab the chandelier and jump and swing on it, and then jump on the next table. He goes, Bubbles, no, no, no.
Now nearly 4 years old, Bubbles was no longer a rascally kid, and a house was hardly an appropriate home for a rapidly growing primate.
Bubbles, sit still.
There was only so much a trainer could do.
Now he's pouting, just like a kid.
They become very strong. It sort of almost happens overnight, and suddenly they pack on all this extra muscle, and they get a real attitude, and they're going to compete with you, and they become very hierarchical suddenly. You know, you can't have an adult chimp free to roam, not in a suburban environment, not in a family home. You just can't. Free to roam in the wild in Africa, yes, but in America, no, no, no.
The trainers came to the house and saw what we had, and they were highly disturbed with Bubbles, the way we treated him. They felt that this was not normal. You don't treat a chimpanzee this way. This is unheard of. They're not humans. He shouldn't be in the house.
It was now time for Bubbles to leave the family home.
Yeah.
They wanted Bubbles to be part of the family, and that's completely understandable. But I suppose the trainer knew what was coming, knew that a cage in the end would be Bubbles' final destiny.
Though he was arguably the best-known entertainer in the world, Michael Jackson was 30 and still living at home. And the family compound in the foothills of the San Fernando Valley was now a bit of a zoo, literally.
It was difficult for Michael to leave home. I think it's because my parents, they instilled in us always that you're not supposed to leave unless you have marriage in mind. It's like, but no.
The Jackson menagerie had clearly outgrown the hills of suburban Encino.
There were so many animals at Havenhurst, the space wasn't there, so he needed more space.
So in 1988, his animal kingdom in tow, the Peter Pan of Popdom moved north to a 2,700-acre ranch he renamed Neverland. And while what happened behind these gates would eventually fuel conjecture and accusations, initially it was simply the retreat of the child who refused to grow up.
All of a sudden, there are these gates in front of you. Huge, massive, 30-foot high, 50-foot across gates with Neverland written across the top in gold letters.
What would be added behind those gates was even more stunning.
I can't go in the park, so I create my own park at Neverland, my own water space, my movie theater, my theme park. That's all for me to enjoy. The star needs some space. Give him a chance to relax. He has a heart. He's human.
Neverland was the perfect spot for him, and he could have all the animals that he wanted, as many as he wanted.
As private zoos go, it's superb. He had tigers there, he had leopards, he had alligators, he had giraffe. An elephant that used to be walked every day from the zoo to the house, and so you could look out the window and see the elephant going by at about 11 o'clock.
Michael seemed to have it all: fame, fortune, and fantasy. A fantastical retreat to escape the noise. But happiness still eluded him.
Can't go to the store. I have to hide in the room. You feel like you're in prison.
He was always living out of suitcases. In his bedroom in Neverland, the case would be open, and Michael would wake up one morning and say, right, I feel like going to South Africa. And they'd just book a plane and they would go.
As with any songwriter communicating through their lyrics, Michael's songs evolved. Though still very personal, his themes were becoming more universal.
He wanted us to care about each other, and he wanted us to care about the world, and he wanted us to bring positive change to the world.
By 1991, his lyrics were less relationship-oriented and more political.
It is our power to change the world that our children live in.
he decided to reach out to famed primatologist Dr. Jane Goodall, a person he greatly admired for her work with chimpanzees.
He would have identified with her affinity with chimps. He would have felt that his feelings towards the chimpanzee species and Bubbles as an individual chimp were similar to perhaps Jane's relationship to David Greybeard, for example, who she had a very close relationship with.
Although Jane objected to keeping a chimpanzee as a pet, she agreed to visit Michael at Neverland.
He loved what I did. He loves chimpanzees. He loved to watch them feeding. He liked their faces. They made him smile. And so I thought, well, you know, if Michael could get a message out to millions of people who would listen, it would be fantastic. And he wrote what he told me he thought was his most powerful song ever.
In 1991, Michael's song Heal the World was released, and he donated millions to environmental and children's charities around the world. While Michael's affinity for children's causes was well known, he still had none of his own. That would change in 1997 when his wife Debbie Rowe gave birth to Prince Michael.
Now he had something, you know, that was not a monkey, a real human and a baby, and it was his. His life was then complete.
Bubbles never actually lived at Neverland. He was only an occasional visitor whenever Michael requested his presence. For the safety of everyone, Prince Michael especially, those visits became more infrequent.
When a chimpanzee becomes an adult at about age 8 to 10, you know, they suddenly become really quite different. They're really strong now. You know, they could, you know, kill you.
No longer in the lap of luxury, jet-setting across the globe and socializing with world leaders, Bubbles' descent from the A-list was rapid and steep, and Michael wouldn't be far behind. As the 90s drew to a close, Michael was powerfully rich and famous. He now had 2 children by his second wife, Debbie Rowe. And in 2002, his third child, Blanket, was born.
Obviously, when the children came along, then, you know, Michael dedicated his time towards his children rather than to chimpanzees or llamas or boa constrictors or whatever.
Bubbles, now sidelined, was living full-time with trainer Bob Dunn and adjusting to living in a cage. Michael was feeling the squeeze as well. His newest album, Invincible, was anything but. It was panned, and sales were poor. And his personal eccentricities were seen in an increasingly unflattering light.
Michael was a very loving and open person, and unfortunately that left him vulnerable for people to see that as a weakness and to exploit that.
2004 was Michael's most difficult year, and his growing debts forced him to sell Neverland.
The ranch that epitomized Jackson's juvenile extravagance is now a shadow of its former glory. Michael Jackson built all this to try and escape from reality, but in the end he simply couldn't afford to live in a fantasy.
When Bob Dunn retired from the business of training apes, Bubbles got a lucky break. He was moved to a new home in Florida. Jackson fans may remember Bubbles as Michael's cute young chimpanzee who disappeared completely from public life many years ago. This is Bubbles today. He's 26 years old and weighs nearly 200 pounds. Patty Reagan founded the Center for Great Apes in 1997 as a sanctuary for apes that had been dumped by show business.
We try to put them together so that they can have a social life. They can build their own families here. So Bubbles is part of a family.
Bubbles has been acclimated into normal chimpanzee life. Michael had planned to visit Bubbles in 2005, but he ended up not making the trip. Tragically, he would never get the chance.
These will be my final show performances
This will be it. And when I say this is it, it really means this is it.
My brother, the legendary king of pop, Michael Jackson, passed away on Thursday, June 25th, 2009 at 2:26 p.m.
Suddenly, Bubbles was thrown back into the public eye.
One of the questions that came a lot to me was, have you told Bubbles? How did Bubbles react? Is Bubbles sad? Well, Bubbles has not really seen Michael for 5 to 7 or 8 years, and so he's not been part of his daily activity. I think that if he had been there and been around him, he would definitely realize the loss. We had over 100 contacts from around the world for film crews that wanted to come in and film Bubbles, take photos of him. We turned everybody down.
With Bubbles being pursued by the press once more, Patty decided it was time to set the record straight. This is the first time documentary cameras have been allowed to film him.
Over here,
Nevertheless, Patty is very cautious about upsetting Bubbles.
We have not shown Bubbles specifically any photos of Michael Jackson or videos. We don't know how he'll react to it. What if it did bring back memories and it made him feel badly?
He attached to Michael. Michael was his mother figure. So to see pictures of Michael, to watch video of Michael would remind him of his earlier years. It could well disturb him.
While filming this program, LaToya expressed an interest in visiting Bubbles. Patty agreed. And for the first time in more than 20 years, they will reunite.
I often think about Bubbles, and I think it would be my dream to see him and wonder if he would recognize me or even know me and just see how big he's gotten or what he's doing, what his personality is like, the difference in what it was then and now.
I don't know how Bubbles is going to react to seeing LaToya. He hasn't seen her for 20 years is what I've been told. But I think that if he does recognize her, he may not show the reaction. He may just walk away. He may display like he does with other visitors.
Adult chimpanzees perform a display when they meet someone, and Bubbles is no exception. LaToya is on her way to Florida. It's only been 10 months since Michael passed away, and LaToya is coming to terms with that. The visit with Bubbles may give her some closure.
I am a bit nervous about it, but I can't wait to take pictures with him.
After traveling 3,000 miles, LaToya and her entourage arrive at the Center for Great Apes.
Hello, how are you? I'm Patty.
You must be Patty. How are
But before LaToya gets to see Bubbles again, she is warned it might not be the affectionate reunion she expects.
Bubbles has a unique feature. He will get a mouthful of water sometimes, and he'll spit it at people that are new, that are visiting. Yes, so you might get a little shower from Bubbles.
Where did he adopt that from? Because he didn't do that before.
Well, he was a baby then, and I think that is one way he can get a reaction, and that's the most interesting thing, because generally people will yell and jump back or laugh, and of course that just seals the deal. Sometimes he's a gentleman, but I just want to prepare you. If he does that, the best thing to do is just kind of turn away and not try not to yell out of it. Don't make a big deal of it.
Okay.
And you'll step
Is it
back.
very forceful?
No, it's just
a little bit. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Good.
So
I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah. So
I can't wait to see him.
How will Bubbles react when he meets LaToya? And what memories will be evoked when she sees Bubbles again? It's been 20 years since LaToya Jackson has seen the playful chimpanzee her brother Michael adored.
this is Stryker.
Hi, Stryker. Bubbles used to have that energy.
Well, he's 5 years old.
He's 5?
So he's about the same age, probably.
Yes, when I saw
the
him
last time you saw Bubbles.
And that's the size.
And here is Bubbles.
Oh my!
And I think we'll.
Hi, Bubbles. What are you hiding in your mouth? Hi, Bubbles. Hi.
Sure.
Oh.
So.
Oh, look at
If you want to come a little bit, yeah, you can come closer.
Is something in its mouth?
Let's see, have you got some water? How you doing, sweetie? What's in your mouth? You swallow that?
Oh, look at, he looks incredible.
Isn't he beautiful?
He looks incredible. Bubbles, hi, do you remember me? Bubbles? Hi, Bubbles. Look at him.
Isn't he a cutie?
Bubbles. Bubbles.
Look who's
Bubbles,
here.
hi. I want to touch him.
He might be spitting. I think he is going to spit. It's all right.
He's getting ready to do it, yes?
Can you show me what's in your mouth?
Bubbles, what's in your mouth?
You want some
Bubbles,
grapes?
open your
You want
mouth.
some more grapes? Open your mouth.
He wants to put water on me. Okay, I think he swallowed it.
Yes, I think he did too. Open. One thing that Bubbles really likes to do is play in the hose. Do you want a drink? He likes the water.
He likes, can I put it on him?
Yes, you can.
Here, some water. Yes, Bubbles.
Did he play in the hose and in bathtubs and water?
Yes, he did.
He did?
Yes. It's very interesting because when I look at Bubbles, I still see the features of when he was extremely young. And that looks the same to me. And I see the gray around his mouth.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. I think he kind of remembers me, guys. I think he's being shy with it.
Oh, I think he definitely remembers you, LaToya.
Yes. See, he didn't spit on me.
He didn't spit on you, yes. Thanks. It was very nice for having you visit us, and I've been very interested to see how Bubbles reacted, and I think he definitely recognized you, definitely remembered you.
Oh, he's so adorable. But if you don't mind, I just want to say a couple of words to Bubbles alone.
That's great.
Okay.
You can go around there. Just, stay back. Okay.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bubbles? Bubbles? Yes. Hi, Bubbles. Hi. Hi, Bubbles. You know I miss you. I haven't seen you in ages, Bubbles. Do you remember me? Bubbles? Do you remember me, Bubbles? You're looking like you do. Do you, Bubbles? Oh, I want to kiss you. I want to hug you, and I know I can't because you're so big. I know. I think you remember me, don't you? Yes, you do. Bubbles. Bubbles. I know. You know, don't you, Bubbles? Bye-bye, Bubbles. Bye-bye.
Having already separated once before, LaToya's goodbye to Bubbles is bittersweet.
I'm sure that Michael loved him very much, and I think he took very good care of him. There's no doubt that chimps feel the loss of a companion, and so the focus is on making sure Bubbles can live 30 or 40 more years, and it's making sure that he has a peaceful life. This is what our focus is on here, not about his past, but about his future. Right, Bubbles? You want this back? That's for you. Yep.
It may have been acceptable to keep a chimpanzee as a pet 20 years ago, but we now understand that they belong in the wild. In the peaceful and content face of the now grown chimpanzee, it is so easy to remember what was and wonder what could have been.
Michael was unique. Michael was irreplaceable. There will only ever have been one Michael Jackson.